What's the future of electric vehicles? Tesla, Rivian, Zero motorcycles? Interestingly, a recent German study found that consumers are far more interested in commuting on electric bikes, 18%, than electric cars and scooters at 7% each, with electric mopeds getting little love at 3%. And electric motorcycles? 2%. Sorry, Zero and Livewire, but at the risk of tooting my own horn, I already stated in my last e-bike video, the masses don't want big, expensive, range anxiety-inducing electric motorcycles. What's a big bike for? Riding far, preferably far away from the city, which generally corresponds with being far away from quick charging stations. And for that activity, current battery technology does not measure up to gasoline engines in terms of energy density and range. I've said it before and I'll say it again, electric vehicles are best at city commuting, and very few people are willing to drop 30 grand on a Livewire for their 10-kilometer commute to work, especially when they can spend $2,000 on a smaller, more nimble alternative that doesn't require a license, insurance, or expensive gear, and which can easily be kept in a city apartment. And these bikes are getting more capable all the time. My introduction to e-bikes was the Hemingway Cruiser, which I reviewed a couple of months ago, and which reminded me of the old school 50cc mopeds I grew up with in Poland in the early 80s. The Cruiser has a 48-volt, 17.5 amp-hour Samsung battery, which powers a 750-watt motor that produces a massive 80 Nm of torque, and with some decently enthusiastic pedaling from me or my wife Brooke can get 100 kilometers or 60 miles of range. I like that bike a lot, especially the massive range, with the major exception of the mechanical cable-operated disc brakes, which felt too squishy and weak to hold down a 73-pound machine capable of a 40 km/h top speed. And so Himiway sent me a 79-pound bike instead, the Himway Zebra. Does this mean that this one brakes worse? Ah, but what's this? Hydraulic Tektro disc brakes for hauling down a pretty large and heavy machine, and an even larger 20 amp-hour battery with a longer claimed range. So, are the brakes and many other upgrades worth the extra $400 US or 500 Canadian dollars that the Himway Zebra costs over the Cruiser? And is this bike the perfect inexpensive city commuter that can double as a recreational machine for exploring impressive distances on a single charge? I've tested the range on the most efficient settings and the most powerful, so let's take a look at this machine, and as always, if you find this content valuable, please subscribe, like the video, and send it to someone who might be interested in the subject. Full disclosure, Hemingway sends these bikes to creators for free to get reviewed, which may tempt some to be overly complimentary. However, while the Cruiser did impress me with its power and range and very reasonable price, I did call out the fact that Hemingway's claims about rider fit were overly optimistic, luggage mounting options were limited, and the brakes were not great even when you clamped down with all 4 fingers and pulled all the way back to the grip. Mechanical disc brakes will never be as powerful or provide as good a feel as hydraulic ones. But despite my criticisms, Hemingway sent me the Zebra, which proves that they are a company that doesn't expect creators to kiss up to them. Like the Cruiser, the Zebra came partially disassembled, though it required a little less effort to put together. Unlike on the Cruiser, the rear light came already attached, and the hydraulic brakes were easier to adjust and dial in than the mechanical ones. Still, I'm a very long-time cyclist, and I've built several bikes from the ground up, so if you haven't done this before, make sure you watch an assembly video. The Zebra has several upgrades over the Cruiser which justify its higher price. The Cruiser costs $1,600 US and $2,200 Canadian, while the Zebra comes in at $2,000 US and $2,700 Canadian. What do you get for your extra $400 or $500? As mentioned, the brakes are the biggest difference, but the Zebra also has a higher capacity battery at 20 amp hours versus the Cruiser's 17.5. The new motor now has 86 Nm of torque instead of 80. The massive battery is integrated into the correspondingly massive down tube, the wiring is run internally, the rack is beefier, the pedals are metal rather than plastic, and it has a bottle mount. Both bikes look good, but I feel that the Zebra has a little better fit and finish with higher quality lights, especially the Hemingway branded rear light. It also has an integrated battery and separate bell. The Cruiser's bell was integrated into the brake assembly, which was cool but would be a pain to replace in the event of failure. Additionally, the Zebra with a slightly longer seat post can fit taller riders and has a 400-pound capacity versus the Cruiser's 375. Does the Cruiser beat the Zebra in any regard? Yes. These are both heavy bikes, but the Cruiser is listed as being lighter. The Zebra is a huge bike, almost the size of a dual sport motorcycle, and much larger than a 50cc scooter such as a Honda Ruckus. The internal battery looks more integrated, but is also far harder to remove than the Cruiser's. Fortunately, Himiway provided an opening in the charging port which can be accessed without taking out the battery. Finally, I mentioned that the rack was beefier and also provides more mounting options for panniers. However, most people will never carry that much weight on their rack, and thinner rails are actually easier to mount panniers on. I have a set of bags that I've toured with in the past with a mounting system that only accepts thin rails, and despite them being fully loaded down, I never felt that I needed a stronger rack. These bikes are very heavy already, so if weight can be reduced without endangering the structural integrity, it should be. However, despite a few small flaws, the Zebra is generally higher quality than the Cruiser and is worth the extra money. For $2,000 American or $2,700 Canadian dollars, you get a very fast and powerful bike with massive range, good adjustability, and chunky good looks. I found the Zebra's handlebars more to my liking than the Cruiser's because I like my bars lower and riding position more aggressive. The Zebra runs on pedal assist or throttle with power being cut when the brakes are applied. The brakes also make the rear light flash. The display is the same on both bikes and is perfectly fine, except that zeroing out the trip meter is needlessly complicated and the menus, which provide a wide range of adjustment, are not intuitive. I did increase the top speed from 36 to 40 km per hour, switched the bike from having 5 levels of pedal assist to 9, and slightly smoothed out the motor's response by following the instructions given by a YouTuber named The Tech of Tech. I'll include a link to his video in the description below. Finally, the 7-speed Shimano group on the Zebra is pretty basic but does its job well. As with all such bikes, some adjustment was necessary to fine-tune the shifts. As far as performance goes, the Zebra is typical Himiway. It's powerful, fast, and has very good range. The motor was almost too jumpy until I dialed it back a bit. It can catch you out if it suddenly comes on in the middle of a U-turn. The fork is basic, but it does have a lockout feature, and in the open position absorbs bumps pretty well. The handling is very solid. I would say almost motorcycle-like. It feels a bit slower steering than the Cruiser, but overall the Zebra is more stable, even in high-speed descents. The huge tires feel like they should be on a motorcycle and exhibited no alarming behavior at very high speeds. And yes, the braking is much improved, with the hydraulic stoppers hauling the bike down with authority with only 2 fingers needed for the job. Off-road, the bike is okay as long as the trail doesn't become too gnarly. I rode a fair bit of gravel, some dirt, and had a short stint on an ATV trail which had a lot of deep, loose sand, and the Zebra with its mildly knobby tires plowed through, barely noticing the terrain it was on. On tighter mountain bike single track, it would probably struggle because of its weight, length, and basic forks, not to mention the lack of rear suspension. But that's not what this bike is for. It's for riding fast and long and keeping you comfy, and it does that very well. Of course, factors like weight, topography, speed, and how often you're braking will affect your range. Brooke, who weighs 120 pounds plus gear and riding in top pedal assist mode, finished a medium hilly 50 kilometers just as the display ticked down from 2 bars to 1. This means that Brooke had 10 to 15 kilometers left in the Electron tank if she kept on chugging at top pedal assist. Conclusion: at max pedal assist, going 40 km per hour or 25 miles per hour and carrying a lighter rider who is pedaling, the Zebra gets 60 to 65 kilometers on a full charge. But what if you're willing to lower the pedal assist to increase range? I took the bike up to my cabin and decided to test max range in a mid-pedal assist mode. By now I had programmed 9 pedal assist levels and decided to do my ride on pedal assist level 5, which was set at 33 km per hour. It also must be noted that this area is very hilly and the ride starts and ends with a 100-meter climb which tops out at 24% going out and 14% coming back. This ride included some gravel and loose dirt. Himiway claims a 60 to 80 mile range on the Zebra, which is about 100 to 130 kilometers. But given the terrain and the fact that I was wearing many layers and carrying several cameras, drone, water bottle, and a big knapsack, I expected the bike to fall short. To my surprise, it took a great deal of time for the first bar to tick off the battery. Later, bars started coming down quicker, and after a 70-kilometer loop of very hilly terrain, I was back in town with 2 bars left. I decided to do a few quick out and backs in different directions to kill the rest of the battery, including on some dirt, then headed for home and the big climb with over 90 kilometers on the clock. On the final 1.7 kilometer climb, and with the bike having sat at 1 bar for quite a while, I was not surprised that the majority of the climbing was done by my legs.
I am working. I'm not working nearly as hard as I usually work on this hill, of course. But this is about 10% right here, so. And the motor is still helping me, but I'm working hard down to the lowest gear here. Climb out of the saddle. It's the steepest part right here. It's gonna die. It'll die right here. And that's it. We made it, and it's still showing that it's helping me a bit. And I think it is, although I'm in the lowest gear now. And we're cresting the top right now. So now, 2K to go, but it's all downhill. So I'll consider that 2K to be in the bag because we started a lot lower than here.
I pulled in at 96 kilometers with the assist barely working and called it a day. 1 bar left, but it's not doing much at this point. It's still pulling a little bit, but not much. Now, I weigh about 175 right now. I'm wearing a jacket, some other gear. I had a bag with my drone. I also had this 360 camera on the bike, and all the batteries and associated gear, and a little lock that I used to lock the bike when I went into the coffee shop. So with all of that, I'm guessing I weighed probably around 200 pounds. And I did pedal quite a bit. So, you know, if you're heavier, or if you're not really willing to put down the watts, don't expect to get 96K. But in the bike's defense too, it was a very, very hilly ride. Very hilly ride. So, and I did a lot of gravel, and I did a little bit of a ATV trail. And so those have much greater rolling resistance. I'm running about 28 PSI in the tires. The maximum is 30, I believe. So, you know, if you want to get further, run a higher PSI. Just reduces rolling resistance a little bit. Generally speaking, the bike did quite well. It was, you know, it's like if I get on it and I pedal right now, it'll still go. It just won't go very fast. It'll do the minimum that it can to move along. It's in limp mode right now. So what conclusion to draw from that? On a flatter paved route, the bike would no doubt have gone well over the 100-kilometer mark with me pedaling to help it along. Could it get to 130 kilometers with me or Brooke on board? We'll test that out in the future and get back to you. Just keep in mind we both like to pedal hard, which helps stretch the range. However, pedaling or not, the majority of riders will never come close to exhausting the enormous battery during a weekday commute or a weekend pleasure ride. Elon Musk was asked once if Tesla will build an electric motorcycle, and he sidestepped the question, indicating that he had a lot on his plate already. However, I can't help but suspect that somewhere in the Tesla offices, a team of researchers has already determined that little appetite exists for high-end, fully electric motorcycles. The barriers of entry with the prices and licensing requirements are too high to attract the masses. E-bikes, on the other hand, are starting to outnumber regular bicycles on city streets and trails and have achieved tremendous popularity. And why not when you get all this for $2,000 US? Commuting, riding for pleasure, shopping, even putting one of these on the back of an RV is inexpensive and convenient. So, do you see yourself adding an e-bike to your stable, or would you prefer something like a Honda Ruckus? Can these replace cars as primary commuters in cities? Please share your thoughts in the comment section below and ride safe. If you're interested in any of the gear that Brooke and I wear or use, or the camera equipment we use to film this channel, the links are below. Everything listed there was bought with our own money and we are not sponsored by any company. However, the links below are affiliate links and the channel is paid a small amount for referring you to shop at no additional cost to you. We do not recommend any products that we are not satisfied with ourselves, but we do strongly urge you to do your research and select the correct size for items like helmets and clothing. As always, thanks for watching, your support is greatly appreciated. Please hit that subscribe button, give the video a thumbs up, and leave a comment below. And whatever you ride, enjoy it. Wave at other bikers no matter what they're riding. We're all part of a brotherhood and sisterhood. Keep the rubber side down, shiny side up, and may the spokes be with you.